What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and I'm joined by a very special guest.
Yo, what is going on YouTube? It's your boy Dan, aka aDrive. What is up, dude? How you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing pretty well, fighting a little bit of a cold, but, you know, I'm sure you have it a lot worse with all the snow you're surrounded by and everything.
Yeah, I think we got about a foot of snow today, so that'll be fun.
yeah, no kidding. But regardless, we're here today to chat about your team for the upcoming NPA season. So, before we even get into the nitty-gritty details, are you just excited in general for the upcoming NPA season?
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I have to say that I'm very, very busy with a lot of the content I'm creating right now, first and foremost, but I'm very excited about the League format. I've loved the League format. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, basically since I started YouTube for Pokemon content, and I'm really excited to do the NPA again this season. I fell a little bit short last season, didn't quite make the showing I wanted to, but I'm looking forward to a new season. I got the new team name, the Minnesota Vikavolts, which is really cool. So shouts to my Metapod fans out there, but we are switching up for the Vikavolts this season, which should be a good time as well. So we'll have some new logos and t-shirts and all that good stuff. And I was just trying to really capture the Alola vibe, man, because, you know, it's a new game, it's new hyped, and Vikavolt's a cool Pokemon, so, you know, I wanted to snag that mascot and make it happen, so.
Speaking of snagging that mascot, you actually drafted Vikavolt as well, so in general,
yes.
how did the draft go? Did you get everything you wanted? What was your plan going into the draft?
Yeah, so going into the draft, I wish I had more of a plan than I did, but I actually told myself for this league and any of the leagues I was going to be in this season, simply due to my schedule and stuff, I was just going to kind of just have fun with it and just wing it and try out different Pokemon that I haven't used before, maybe bring back some old favorites, and ultimately just try to have fun playing the format and not put too much stress or pressure on myself. I felt like for the last couple seasons, I put so much pressure on myself to try to prove to everyone else and myself that I can hang with the big guys in this league and the leagues in general, and at this point, like, I feel that, you know, without kind of sounding full of myself or anything, I feel like
your resume shows that you can.
I got a decent resume. Now, that doesn't make me the best player by any means, but I've done so decently well in some of the leagues. So now it's just about just trying to have fun and stuff, because at the end of the day, like, I do enjoy playing with a lot of the coaches, and I love this format, and it's been really cool. So I didn't really have much of a plan going to the draft, if I'm being totally honest. I kind of just winged it. I kind of went round by round, especially when you're looking at a 24-team format. It's very difficult to plan out a draft. I had kind of a terrible draft spot at 21. I would have much rather be towards either the beginning or even the last pick rather than being 21, but it gave me something close to a wheel so I could at least plan 2 picks at a time. But it was definitely pretty much a struggle to go through this draft, because with so many teams, like, I would pick my second pick and then I would have to wait, you know, 40 picks to go again. So you can't really have too much of a solid plan. You just have to kind of hope that things fall to you. And what I found is there was a few instances where I had to grab a Pokemon way earlier than I otherwise would, just to guarantee that I would get it. So, and you see through my draft, like, I didn't even pick my T1 until, like, the second to last round. So I kind of was put in a tough situation, but that's just the format. Everyone had to deal with it. So it was just tough to deal with the way the draft was set up. But again, everyone had to deal with it. So it's not like I was the only one, but it definitely made things really challenging in terms of picking a cohesive team. But I do think I managed to do that. So yeah, I do think I managed to.
If you don't go in with a draft plan.
Exactly, and that's how that worked out. I definitely didn't get sniped too much. That works.
Awesome. So then, with the team that you did end up drafting, do you think it fits your sort of playstyle? What is your sort of playstyle? Do you have one in particular?
Yeah, so in the past, I would say, like, for the most part, I definitely try to go with bulky offense. You know, I don't like to use the word stall because I don't think that's accurate to describe how I play. I don't really think I play stall, but I definitely like bulkier Pokemon. I don't really function very well with like glass cannons. It's not really my cup of tea. I really like to have a solid defensive core and a support team to work around that. And I also really like Pokemon that I feel can be very versatile in a format, because in the past I've had really good mons like Rotom Wash and stuff like that, but I find that they can be very difficult to use at times simply for the fact that they're very predictable. So I wanted to draft a team that I felt kind of broke away from that in some regards, at least. Obviously not every Pokemon can run, you know, 5 different sets, but I wanted to try to come up with something that I felt was going to be versatile and have a couple different dimensions to it from an offensive and a defensive perspective. But I definitely tried to focus on the defensive end of things, and that really was reflected in my first pick, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Your team definitely seems a bit more balanced and a bit more on the offensive side. You've got, obviously, that kind of hail core, right? The snow from the real life is even affecting your Pokemon gameplay with Alolan Ninetales and Alolan Sandslash, which is pretty cool. And you've got some, you know, bulkier mons like Necrozma. Even Crocodile can play a pretty bulky role. Vaporeon, which seems to be a favorite of yours.
Yes. Yeah, so I actually want to touch on a few of those things. So one of the things, Alolan Sandslash actually was drafted the round before I was going to grab it, I believe by Jerry. And I immediately messaged Jerry and I said, Jerry, I need this Sandslash. How do I get this Sandslash from you? Because this was a core piece to my draft plan. Without Sandslash, my draft doesn't function, and my team looks a heck of a lot worse without that Pokemon. So I got to give him props. He was awesome and was willing to work out a deal with me. So we made that work, and I got Sandslash on the squad because it's such a pivotal Pokemon. I needed that Steel type. I needed a Rapid Spinner or some sort of hazard removal, even though Sandslash is definitely not the best. Too. Yeah, it's not the best in those roles. I had leaned towards Beartic, but from a type perspective, I really needed the Steel type, and I really needed a Pokemon that could remove hazards. Even though I don't put too much emphasis on hazard removal in League format, it's still important to at least have one thing or two things. That way that you don't get, like, hazard stacked. But, yeah, I'm really glad the team I have. I got some old favorites. Vaporeon I'm very comfortable with. And I think that Vaporeon actually was overlooked in the draft. I don't think it should have lasted as long as it did, but I actually think that people just forgot it was there. And I took advantage of that. Yeah, I actually think that people just, like, didn't see it or something or it wasn't on the sheet, or I don't know what happened, but it should not have fallen.
Waters are valuable in the League format, so.
It should not have fallen that far, but, you know, I was really glad with the ultimate team I came up with. I have some really cool little strategies with some shell smashing shenanigans. I have 2 smashers under Aurora Veil. No, I don't believe so. But
okay.
Monior and Gorbis behind an Aurora Veil are going to be very scary.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Speaking of threats, though, we got a lot of new Mons in the Counter League format. I know there were some of those really high up there S-tier Pokemon that are really powerful. What do you think are the biggest threats in the Counter League format metagame right now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to look at Tapu Lele. I mean, Tapu Lele alone, I honestly don't think it should have been allowed, but at the same time, I understand that this is the first season with the new format, so people are testing things out. But in my mind, Lele is very, very good. It has, in a League format, it doesn't have switch-ins because you can pretty much designate the move slot. It's got a good enough move pool to cover every scenario, and the terrains are very, very good because, like, I've been playing a lot of VGC, and in VGC, you can change the terrain because everyone is running at least one Tapu, but in League, only 4 teams have a Tapu, so you can't change terrain. So that terrain's staying up for 5 turns, which means that you have a very, very big problem against the Tapus, specifically Lele, and Coco too. I feel like is a really big threat. Boo-Boo's scary because there's no switch-ins to it, but well, very few switch-ins, but it can be kind of worked around. And Finny's good too. I had a chance to draft Finny, but I decided to go with Necrozma because I felt that its bulk was really good. It's got a great ability, and it does function really well. Like I said, it could be. Yeah, it could be a rocker. It's very versatile. It's got reliable recovery. It works really well with weakness policy and things like that, so it can be a pretty versatile Pokemon. But there's some big threats, man. There's no doubt about it. I think Mega Metagross is one of the ones that you got to look at. I demonstrated how effective that could be in the UCL. And again, I'm not quite sure why it was allowed, but at the same time, you know, you got to see what happens. But that thing is scary. I hope I don't face it because you lose to that thing every time. And even with the Mega buff, too. So now it gets base 110 speed on the first turn. So it's going to be a scary Pokemon to deal with. I'll be rocking berries on everything.
It's definitely a scary meta. I think in general it's just shifted more towards offense. I know towards the end of Gen 6, the metagame in general was kind of getting stally, kind of getting slower, which isn't necessarily bad, but it just seems like this generation is starting off with a lot of hard-hitting threats. Not like a lot of the Alolan Mons are very fast, but some of them, you know, those Tapus, super powerful. We got the Ultra Beast, which just hits so hard. Do you think that a lot of those Mons can even really be prepped for very well in a League format?
Yeah, they definitely can be prepped for. What I found is you can really prep for anything, but it's just a matter of, you know, how many things you have to designate to that one target. So, and that's what makes it so hard to deal with these big threats. It's not that you can't figure out a way to get around them. It's not that you have to dedicate so many of your resources to one thing, and that takes away your ability to cover the rest of the threats. So, in a situation of dealing with like a Mega Metagross or like a Tapu Lele, you're gonna have to run those damage-reducing berries. You're gonna have to run a Focus Sash or some sort of kind of ace up your sleeve to be able to handle that reliably.
A very dedicated hard counter.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result of that, you can negatively impact the way your team functions against the rest of the Pokemon that might be threats. So it's definitely a balancing act of trying to determine, you know, how can I handle this threat in the most appropriate way without sacrificing my team to be vulnerable to the other threats on a team, because as you could probably tell, it's most teams have more than just one threat. It's just that usually it's that one threat that's the biggest threat, and then I would say most teams probably have, you know, at least, you know, 2 to 3 solid offensive threats, and then kind of some, you know, middle line Pokemon. So especially with the tier structure. But at the end of the day, I think anything can be worked around. I've played against teams in the past where I look at the matchup and I'm like, well, I totally just lose this Pokemon without doing anything. But there is ways around it, and you know, it's just a matter of having a good game plan ahead of time, and executing, and just dedicating the right resources, and knowing, you know, how to manage, you know, the game, and understanding what your win condition is going to be if you're going to come out on top.
Gotcha. So to pry a little further, what do you think is the most important aspect of, you know, finding success in the league format? Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it. It's, you know, team building and, you know, scouting maybe the opponent's player, how he likes to use the opponent, or like the Pokemon he or she has, you know, how you can actually try to counter that by building appropriate sets, you know, scattering your EVs correctly. But then there's also playing in the game itself. But which of those aspects do you think is most important, if you had to choose, of course?
Yeah, so I think when it comes down to me personally, I've always valued everything before the match actually happens. I've always felt that the preparation ahead of time is what ultimately has resulted in the majority of my success, being able to come up with really cool sets and unique ways to handle threats, and being prepared, and just kind of understanding what the different scenarios could be in a match, and almost envisioning what's going to happen. I mean, I can tell you there's been a handful of matches where I played against a tough opponent, and I, you know, basically could have written out the first 10 turns on a piece of paper before the match even happened, just from knowing the way the matchup was going to play, and understanding how the Pokemon worked and what I thought my opponent would expect. And I always come back to this one time where I ran like a max attack Adamant Mega Sableye with Sucker Punch and Knockoff and Fire Punch to handle an Azelf and a Scissor, predicting the Scissor to substitute on my potential Will-O-Wisp, and then I Fire Punched it, and all this other stuff, right? So I've always felt that preparation. Yeah, I've always felt that preparation was such an important aspect. But when it comes to the actual match itself, I've always tried to stick to the safe or middle ground play, and evaluate every scenario in the moment, and just be willing and able and ready and aware of when you need to pull that trigger to make that really tough double switch, or make that really tough prediction you have to make, those game turning predictions. And it's all about kind of weighing out the equation in your head and saying, okay, what is my risk reward for doing this play? What's my risk reward for doing the next play? And every given turn you have a total of, you know, I don't know, 20-30 combinations that can happen between the moves that you have and the Pokemon you can switch into, and what your opponent can do. So it's a matter of kind of doing the balance in your head and understanding, you know, what's my risk reward here and what's my opponent's risk reward here. You know, are they going to switch into this Pokemon? Probably not. That's their win condition, so I can make this play, or whatever it may be. So it's really running those calculations in your head and trying to get an understanding of exactly that. Just knowing what the risk reward is for every scenario, and doing your best in that time that you have to run down the scenarios of what are going to happen in game. And another thing that I think is super important is to try to look ahead. Don't just play for the turn that you're in. Play for like 4 or 5 turns down the road, because it's really important to be able to foresee what is going to happen. Not only, like I said, predicting what's going to happen on this turn, but see what's going down, because you don't have a ton of time, and there's a lot of scenarios to play out, and a lot of you know, risk reward to weigh out in your head before you make each play. So I've always put a lot of heavy emphasis on the pregame stuff, but I do think that pulling the trigger on that nasty double or the great prediction in the game can always swing a match in your favor.
Is everyone taking notes? Listen up. But okay, awesome. Are there any particular teams, I don't know if you've looked at everyone else's teams yet, that immediately stick out as threatening? I know a lot of people have been talking about the Cubchoo's and the Mega Metagross Salamence Clefable core. Like, that screams intimidating to me. But I don't know if you've had the chance to, I don't know, scout your competition at least in a little bit, or at least a little bit ahead of time.
I wish I could say I have, but I honestly haven't. I always get this question every time a league starts, and I never have an answer, because I don't look at the other teams, if I'm being totally honest. I look at them when I play them. I don't really worry too much about what other teams have or what they're doing, because it is what it is. You know, like you mentioned, Elliot's team, the Cubchoo's, he's got an insane team. I mean, Clefable, Salamence, Metagross is scary. How that happened, I don't know, but that is incredibly scary. But at the same time, like, it is what it is, right? So I have to figure out a way around that, and I mean, I have a Necrozma, I have an Alolan Ninetales, so it's doable, you know. But
right.
At the end of the day, like I said, I try not to worry too much about the other teams because I'll have plenty of hours to mull over their team when our matchup comes. So no point in looking at it now.
Makes sense. No need to stress yourself any earlier than you actually need to, I guess.
Exactly.
So with that, do you have any last words for your fans, everyone listening, to get them pumped up for the upcoming season?
Yeah, well, I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time to interview me here for this. That is awesome. And I want to thank everyone supporting the NPA and the other leagues that we do. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being so great and supporting all the content. A lot of time and effort goes into these leagues. I can tell you behind the scenes, people like Jodor and a bunch of others, countless others, put in infinite hours of time into these leagues to make them awesome. And I can tell you that myself and a lot of the other coaches, pretty much all the coaches, right, we put in a lot of time to put out entertaining gameplay. And please try to remember that. The goal here, at least for me anyway, is to give you guys entertaining matches to watch and hopefully give you something to watch on your Saturday or Sunday afternoons with some popcorn or something like that. So just remember, at the end of the day, the leagues are for fun. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to be entertaining. So don't be too mean to your favorite coach this season if they don't do as well as you would like. And if I suck this season, well, I'm sorry, but we're going to try to have some fun, man. I'm not doing a very good job of hyping people up. Wait, let me try this again. Guys, we're going to do really well this season, and I am going to shock my opponents into submission and sweep them with Sand Slash, guys. So don't worry. I'm going to be using Shell Smash at least 10 times this season. I will click Shell Smash. There you go.
Fun stuff. And thank you, aDrive, for taking the time out of your super busy day as well to do one of these interviews. And I hope you guys are excited to listen to other coach interviews, other analyst-based videos, and of course the battles themselves when the season does start. But until then, this has been Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.